Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining PHCA for today's webinar, WEDnetPA Training Program. I'm Wendy Johnson with the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. PHCA offers monthly webinars to members to receive updates from department staff on regulations, learn from industry experts on current trends and practices, and to gain better understanding of practical application tools to equip you so that you may continue to provide the highest level of quality care possible. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the PHCA website. The webinar has been approved for one continuing education credit for PHCA members. Credits will be uploaded to NAB within the next 2 weeks for those of you who have provided us with your unique NAB number. I'll be sending a link to a quick survey following today's webinar. Your feedback is very important to us and to our speakers, so please take a moment to complete the survey. All attendees will be in listen-only mode. However, throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit questions using your questions pane on the right hand of your screen, and our presenter will address them throughout the presentation. Today's webinar is being presented by Tom Venditti, State Director with WEDnetPA. Today you will learn the guidelines and eligibility criteria for WEDnetPA. WEDnetPA is a state-funded workforce training program that can help offset the cost of essential and technical skills training for your employees. At the conclusion, you will understand how to apply for grant funds and receive reimbursement for eligible training. I'll now turn the webinar over to Tom.
Thank you, Wendy, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I'm going to provide an introduction to the WEDnet program, and that will be then followed by a more detailed discussion on the application process, and we will talk briefly about how to invoice and get reimbursed for eligible training. I want to start by just referencing that the program was originally created to support Pennsylvania manufacturers and technology companies. But in this new fiscal year, 1920, we have made some changes that are intended to address more healthcare entities. And so at the request of the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, I think you're going to find these changes to be very beneficial to the organizations that you represent. So we'll start with just a very brief overview of what WEDnet is. WEDnet is an acronym for the Workforce and Economic Development Network of Pennsylvania, and it's a statewide alliance of colleges and universities that are carrying out and delivering Pennsylvania's incumbent worker training program. Funding comes through the Department of Community and Economic Development through a line item called Pennsylvania First. The network consists of 25 partners. Again, they're predominantly community colleges and state system universities. We also have a couple of others in there to fill in some areas geographically. But these colleges and universities will become your local points of contact for enrollment into the program and for any help and assistance that you need along the way in terms of applications and invoicing. The funding for WEDnetPA is broken into two programs. We have funds for essential skills training and funds for technical skills training. Essential skills training is going to be more of the soft skills. We'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, and I'll give you some examples of the types of training that would fit into essential skills. But the cap per company is $75,000 per year. We have limited funding, and funding actually has been reduced over the past 8 or so years because of the economy, although we're seeing a rebound now. But I bring this up to say that most companies don't see $75,000 per year. Our average contract size is somewhere between 10 and 15,000. But again, it depends on the specific needs and the size of a company, but we can go up to $75,000 per year for essential skills. More importantly, the per person or per employee cap is $600 per year. That was increased this year from $450. Again, you'll see a lot of references in here to manufacturers and technology companies. If you wonder how you fit into this, just know that we've made changes to the guidelines to include inpatient health care. And so that's where nursing homes come into the eligibility now, which they were only funded in the past by exception under certain circumstances. But now that that they're considered eligible, I would encourage you all to take a close look at this and consider applying for grant funds this year. We do differentiate in terms of eligibility for healthcare. So what's eligible is an inpatient facility. We started with hospitals. Hospitals are considered high priority occupations. There's a lot of technology in hospital environments, and so they have actually been eligible for a number of years. We're now bringing into that mix, because of the similarities in terms of the skills required within the facility, nursing homes, mental health facilities, and rehab centers. But again, all inpatient facilities. Related facilities that would not be eligible would be home health care, hospice, doctor's offices, specialty centers, clinics, pharmacies, anything that's generally considered an outpatient. So when you're thinking about the types of training that you might consider for grant funds, they would fall into very broad categories. Things like business operations, computer operations, in your particular areas, things like workplace behavior and workplace health and safety. So this is not an all-inclusive list, but just intended to give you some idea of the areas that you might consider if you were to submit an application. I want to take just a minute to talk a little bit more about workplace behavior skills. One of the requirements of any training is that it is essential to the employee's job at the time of the training. And there are a lot of types of training that are important, but not necessarily required of that individual. So we have some things that are eligible on a limited basis. When we look at sexual harassment, for example, that is an important topic to cover with employees, but unless you're in HR or unless you're a manager or supervisor, we don't consider sexual harassment training to be a requirement of your position. For all other workers, it may be very important for them to know and to be trained in that area, but not necessarily something that you might find in their job description. Violence in the workplace, for example, would be another type of workplace behavior training that would be important for someone in security, or someone, some limited number of people who might be considered first responders in a violent scenario. But again, not for every employee across the board. Health and safety is viewed similarly, although we have made an exception for fire extinguisher, fire safety, and first aid training to be eligible for all employees. The box to the right under limited eligibility would be things, again, that would have to be very specific to that person's job requirement in order to be eligible. And let me just add at this point that if any of this is confusing to you, or if you're not completely clear, that is the role that the colleges and universities will play as your partner in the process and your local point of contact. And we're going to talk more about how you get involved with a partner shortly, but they would be the ones that you might go to and say, this is the training that I have planned for these individuals. Will this be eligible for reimbursement? And they can help you figure those things out in advance of the training. So that was essential skills. We have another stream of funding in our program for technical skills. Technical skill funds are capped at $50,000 per year per company, and the per person or per employee cap is $1,200 per year. So the cap here is substantially higher on a per person basis. Again, these are considered training events that are technical in nature and training that is still specific to that individual employee's job responsibilities. Some examples of what might fall under technical skill training would be things like advanced math in a manufacturing environment, machine operations and maintenance, manufacturing technology, but software implementation. So if you're implementing a new software program within your facility, that may very well be eligible for technical skill training at the higher per person reimbursement rate. And again, you can see under technical applications, scientific and medical things like electronic medical records, ERP, which is enterprise resource planning, management software, root cause analysis, Six Sigma. If you do anything related to lean and efficiencies, certain levels of Six Sigma training would be eligible under TS. And again, not all inclusive, but just to give you an idea of what might fall into that level of training. So when we talk about what is likely to get reimbursed here, the program will reimburse for eligible training for eligible employees up to the caps that I referenced. Anything beyond those caps becomes the responsibility of the applicant. So let's look at the eligibility criteria and qualifications at each level. As an employer, you must be located in Pennsylvania. Your participation in this program is limited to 2 years in a row or 3 years out of the past 5. And we define you by your FEIN. So if you have multiple locations that operate under the same federal employee identification number, that will be considered a single company limited to those company caps that I referenced a few slides before. Your turnover rate cannot be greater than 25%. If it is, and I know in this particular industry, turnover is higher than normal, I would say, because of the environment and the industry's dynamics, we can look at higher turnover rates by exception. So don't completely shy away if you have a 30 or a 35% turnover rate. We just need to talk about that, and we need to understand how you're going to address that and hopefully bring in some training that can help lower your turnover rate. We do have some types of companies that are ineligible. I won't spend any time here really because it's not directly relevant to you, but there are some types of companies that we don't fund. This is actually a new guideline for this fiscal year that can be very helpful to some companies. If you have multiple locations, typically in the past, each location had to have its own contract, which means you may have 3 locations, each one with a separate grant. This year, if your locations are within the same city or town, or within the same county, or within 10 miles of one another, if you meet any one of those 3 criteria, those locations can have a single application and a single contract, and then bring your employees together for training. On the employee side for eligibility, employees must be Pennsylvania residents. They have to work in Pennsylvania. They must earn at least 150% of the federal minimum wage, which would be now $10.88 per hour would be the the minimum they must earn to be eligible. They have to be permanent full-time employees eligible for full-time benefits. So part-time employees in the manufacturing world, seasonal employees, they would not be eligible. Your employees can receive both funding streams. They can receive ES funds and TS funds, as long as they're eligible for the training and it's relevant to their job skills. So with that in mind, potentially a single employee could receive $600 in ES and $1,200 in TS for a total of $1,800 worth of training. Executives with company level decision making are not eligible, so typically think of presidents, vice presidents. They would not be eligible for this program unless you are a small company, which by our definition is less than 100 employees. I mentioned earlier that for technical skill training, any job title, any company size, anyone would be eligible for that. Some things here I've already talked about, like skill building. Training must have a direct impact on the employee's current job, but it also must start on or after July 1st of 2019 and must end on or before June 30th of 2020. So that's the contract period. And we do check to make sure that costs are reasonable, in line with industry averages, with other training that we have processed and approved through the program. So if there's any question about the cost of a training event, if it's some type of specialized training, again, that's where your WEDnetPA partner can help determine the reasonable cost of the training. And when you submit, we need documentation. When you submit for reimbursement, we need documentation that includes the company name and the cost of the event, the date of the training, and so on. Again, that's the partner's role, excuse me, to help you with that. The application process is really quite simple. There's 3 steps, and we're going to talk about this in more detail in a few moments, but you will need to sign a memorandum of agreement. You'll need to prepare a training plan to tell us what you're expecting to do, and then you need to provide some additional information to round out the application and submit that to your WEDnetPA partner. So it's really a 3-step process, pretty quick and easy. We've done everything online and tried to make it as streamlined as possible. Now with that, I'm going to take a short break here and see if we have any questions, anything I can expand upon.
If anyone has any questions, you can type them into the pane on the right hand of your screen. We currently don't have any questions, but if anyone has questions, please type them in and we'll have Tom address them.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to move ahead now with the application process. Again, it's really a streamlined, pretty simple process, can be done pretty quickly. We have really fast turnaround time with the program in terms of reviewing and approving applications and reviewing and approving invoices for reimbursement. So it will probably be a little bit of a different experience from maybe some other state or government programs that you might have worked with. We start with an inquiry which is submitted through our Information Sharing Administration and Analysis Center. We call that ISAC for short, and it's basically your portal where you'll have a dashboard with all of your information and your applications and contracts and everything in one spot, and that's where you'll submit things. If you are new to WEDnetPA, if this is the very first time that you will be applying for WEDnet funds, you'll need to go to our public website at WEDnetPA.com, and you'll need to read the qualification information and then click on a link that says Apply for Training. and you will provide for us some very basic information. It's not a full application. It's just some basic information about what your company is, what you do, and some contact information. And we will then review that to make sure you're going to be eligible before asking you to complete the balance of the application process. On this public website at WEDnetPA.com, you'll also find a link to a document that is our 1920 program guidelines. It's everything I'm talking about today and much more in terms of how the program works and what the process looks like. Again, the training, the inquiry form is quite simple. I'm just going to walk you through that quick. This is your first step into WEDnet as a new company. You're going to provide some basic company information, contact information, and then you're going to choose a WEDnetPA partner. So you would pull up our map, and you can select the partner from the map. If you recall, I showed you the map in the very beginning. Most companies will choose the partner closest to them because they will want to come meet with you the first time, and so a partner that's close, but you have the choice to select any of the partners you would like to work with, any one. Then you'll need to check a few boxes here. Only employees of the company can apply for grant funds. So we ask that you don't engage a third-party consultant or a training provider to submit your application and manage your WEDnet contract. We want an employee of the company to be our point of contact. We also want to know that you've read and understand the guidelines and qualifications. And at this point, you're agreeing to provide social security numbers and job titles for all participating employees. That's a requirement of the program. There's no exceptions to that. We have strong security. Our data privacy and data security policies are available on our public website. And we use this information only for tracking employee caps and for L&I to do some analysis of the impacts of the program. But it is not shared with anyone. And in fact, once you enter it, you're entering this information about your employees on our secure website. Once you enter it, no one at WEDnetPA ever sees those full numbers. We will see the last 4 digits of a social security number, but we'll never see the full number. Now, if you are an existing client of WEDnet, if you have received a WEDnet grant in the past, you should already have a user ID and password, which means you can go to our public website, click on the Log into Isaac link, and it will bring you, once you enter your user ID and password, it will bring you to your dashboard for your company. And if you are eligible, there will be a link here on this page that says New Inquiry. And you would click on that and start a new inquiry, a new application process for 1920. If there is no new inquiry link here, as is the case in this example, that means your company is not eligible in the current funding year, because you have participated 2 years in a row or 3 out of the past 5 years. Don't let this overwhelm you in terms of what it looks like. It's very simple. We're just pointing out a lot of information. These slides, by the way, have been provided to you in a PDF format. And keep in mind that you have a local partner, a college or university workforce professional that is there as your knowledge base for WEDnet to help you through anything that's not clear to you. But very simply, in the new inquiry page, you'll pick the fiscal year, which again is 1920. You'll tell us what type of training you want to apply for, whether it's essential skills funds or technical skills funds. You'll select your WEDnet partner, and you'll provide or confirm contact information for your company, and then you'll submit the inquiry. And that's what gets the ball rolling on your application. Once your inquiry is received by your WEDnetPA partner and it's reviewed, they'll assumingly accept it because you're going to be eligible, and you will receive an email that says, thank you for your inquiry. Here's what you need to do next. You need to do a statement of eligibility memorandum of agreement, complete a training plan, and confirm all of your application information. And it provides you with the link to Isaac where you will log in to do that. This would be your dashboard that you would see once your inquiry is approved. So you'll know the steps. Step 1 is you have to submit your memorandum of agreement. Step 2, your training plan. And step 3 is basically confirming all of your information and submitting. And you can see this is the ES application, and this is a TS application. The MOA is just what you would expect it to be. It spells out the expectations of both your company and WEDnetPA, and you will execute that electronically if you can. If you are the person submitting the application and you're authorized within your facility to execute that agreement, you can simply check this box, again, to provide social security numbers and click accept. That's all there is to the MOA, of course, once you've read the details. And I believe it's only a one-page document. It could fall into the second page, but I'm sure it's no more than that. If you're not authorized to execute this agreement online, then you can print a PDF of the document, have someone physically sign it, and then you can scan it and upload it back into our system. So either approach, whichever works for you. The next step in the process is the training plan. And this is probably the most important piece of what you're going to be doing, because this is really what tells us the type of training, the number of people to be trained, and it helps us determine whether or not you're going to be eligible for reimbursement. This is a dynamic document. So if you were to apply today, what you know today about the next 12 months of training is what you would add to your training plan. If that changes next month, you can come back into your training plan and edit it. You can change what's there, or you can add something new, or you can delete something that you've started with but no longer plan to do. So it's a dynamic document that you'll use throughout the year, and it is the place where you will then go at the completion of your training to create and submit an invoice for reimbursement. So again, on your dashboard, you'll see now that the MOA is completed, and the next step is to submit a training plan. So you'll click on this button, and you will get a window that will open to add events to your training plan. So you click this Add Event button, and you will provide the information, the training event name, description, start and end dates, cost per person, and so on. This is the window where you enter that information. Once you've told us what you're doing or what you propose to do, you will tell us what type of training provider you plan to use. One option is to do in-house training. If we look over here, you'll see in-house is defined as one of your company employees. So if you have someone internally that's qualified to do CPR training, we can reimburse you for that individual's wages during the training and any consumable materials used during the training. Say a handout, for example. But it's just the trainer's wages. So if that person makes $30 an hour, we'll reimburse you $30 an hour plus the cost of materials, and you can submit that for reimbursement. But the trainees themselves, their time, we cannot reimburse for. So in-house is an option. You could also use a WEDnetPA partner. So the colleges and universities are very often qualified training providers for the type of training needs you have. And you can use them if you would like. You're not obligated to. So I want you to understand that you have the choice in terms of who does your training. Because the third option here is any other third-party training provider. So even though your WEDnetPA partner may be able to provide your training, you can choose to go to another third-party training provider. So you'll just tell us here which of those three options you expect to use for this particular training event. So once you've done that, this is what your training plan looks like with one item added. This status column, which is now a check mark, starts as this symbol with the exclamation point. And that means that you've added it, but it hasn't been reviewed yet. Once your WEDnetPA partner reviews that training event, this status will change to a check mark. That means, based on this limited amount of information, the partner has determined that this training appears to be eligible for reimbursement. Now, what we don't know is who exactly is taking this training. So at some point in the future, we still have to confirm, did the employee who took the training need that specific training for their job? And 99.9% of the time, the answer is yes. But there are some instances where it seems companies try to train someone for something they might want them to do somewhere down the road, and we really want the training to be specific to the employee's current job. The one exception to that is if that employee is being groomed to move into a supervisory position. So they're not currently a supervisor, but you want them to take supervisory training with the expectation that they're going to get promoted and become a supervisor. That's the one area where we'll make an exception to this rule. The other thing we have to make sure of is what you tell us the cost is here may just be your best guess at what you expect the cost to be. When the actual invoice is submitted, we still need to make sure the cost is reasonable based on the type of training that's done. So the check mark indicates that it's reviewed and appears to be eligible. But just remember, don't incur any training cost that you wouldn't be willing to pay on your own, because we have to make sure everything fits the guidelines and criteria when it's all said and done. Again, the WEDnetPA partner is your point of contact to try to confirm all of this before the training is scheduled and the cost is incurred. So you need to work closely with your WEDnetPA partner if you have any uncertainties about the process or the eligibility of the training. I just throw that out as a caution. Don't overthink that. We have very few instances where something comes up that's not eligible at the end, but it is a caveat that I think it's important for everyone to understand. So we're getting pretty close to the end here in terms of what needs to happen. You're now going to go in as the last step and confirm your application information. So the MOA is completed, the training plan is completed, and now you'll click this button to confirm everything, and it'll take you into your application and show you all of the information that we either had on record for you from your previous year of eligibility, or information that you've just entered because you're a first-time applicant. But we just want you to review it and make sure everything's correct. And once you do and you submit it, you will get a contract awarded to you based on that application. You will receive an email. Every step of this process, by the way, is confirmed via emails back and forth. So when the application is approved, you'll get an email telling you that you have a contract, and you must come in and accept that contract before you can actually do any invoicing. Very simple process. Again, it's all communication is electronic. All of the information is submitted and reviewed and approved through our Isaac website. So there's very little, if any, paper generated through this process. The final step, which I don't have slides on because I don't want to go too far out and provide too much information at this early stage, but I do want to take just a minute to talk about the invoicing process. So we've gotten through the application, you have a contract in place, and you can now go out and start doing your training. Once a training event is completed, you just simply need to provide us with the invoice, upload your employee attendees and their social security numbers, and in some cases, potentially some additional documentation, depending on the circumstances. But generally speaking, that's all you need to do, and then that gets reviewed by your partner. Once they're satisfied that everything is in place, it runs through my office, and then we turn that around on a weekly basis to cut checks and reimburse for training that's been completed. It seems that a lot of companies tend to take care of everything else in the process in a very timely fashion, but when it comes to invoicing, it gets put on the back burner, and sometimes we don't see invoices come through for 6 months after the training. What we would encourage you to do is to invoice within 30 to 45 days so that you have that cash flow back into your institution as quickly as possible. And again, we try to monitor that and encourage you throughout the year to make sure your invoicing is up to date. But the turnaround on our end is generally very quick. So one or two final thoughts, and then we'll open it up again for questions. We are now in our application period. It started June 1st. It runs until funds are fully contracted. Initially, we look at applications we receive between June 1st and August 31st. So those initial applications are the ones that we rank and prioritize for funding and get those contracts in place by the end of August, 1st of September. If there's funding still available, which often there is, we'll continue to take applications throughout the course of the year. But initial applications would be in place, we would expect, by mid-August, end of August timeframe. And once your contract is in place, it is retroactive to July 1st. So even if your contract isn't in place until the end of August, any training you've done since July 1st could be submitted against that contract. We'll monitor your contract throughout the year, and sometime in January or February, we reassess all of our contracts. If you're not doing the training that you proposed, you're not doing any training, and your money's just sitting there, we reserve the right to pull that money back from you and provide it to another company. So it is important that you begin training as soon after your contract as possible, because if you're not expending those training funds, we want to take those back and use them for another company that has more immediate needs. I think that pretty much wraps up all of the comments that I had for this presentation. I think it's probably time now to open it back up to questions.
Thank you, Tom. That was really great information that you shared with us today. At this time, we're going to open up the question and answer portion, so submit any questions that you have. on the box on the right hand of your screen. We'll just give that a minute or two, and just a reminder that I'll be sending a survey, follow-up survey, later today, along with a recording to today's webinar, and it will be available on our website. This is a quiet group, Tom. We've covered everything perfectly. All right. Also know that I will be sending Tom's contact information in the follow-up email. So if you do have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to him at any time. Oh, we have a question. To verify, WEDnetPA does not pay for staff wages who attend sessions.
That is correct. We don't pay for the trainees' wages to attend the training, the in-house any training, whether it's in-house or third party. On in-house training, we will reimburse for the trainer's wages only.
Okay, that was a great question. We have another question. Could this program be used for CNA training? Hold on a second. Let's see. Is CNA training if being taught in the facility?
Yes. I guess I'll clarify in two ways. In both ways, I think the answer is yes. CNA training would be eligible, and if it's being done in-house, means by an in-house employee of yours. That's in-house training. We would reimburse for that trainer's wages. If you're bringing a third-party training provider to your facility, that can be confusing to people new to the program. You might think of that as in-house because it's being done in your facility. But if it's a third-party training provider, you're going to get invoiced for that training. That would be eligible as well, and we would reimburse the cost of the training up to our caps based on the invoice. So in-house means only that it is your employee doing the training. You can also have training done at your facility by a third-party provider, and we would reimburse for the actual cost of the training based on the invoice you receive up to our employee caps.
Oh, good questions. Keep them coming. If anybody else has any questions, you can type them in or feel free to get in touch with Tom at any time after today.
I might also just add to that, while you are certainly welcome to call me at the Harrisburg office, even without submitting an application, if you look at the map of partners and you know that you want to ultimately work with one of those partners, even though you haven't started the application or the inquiry, you can still reach out to them. You can their email links are on our public website under the same map that I showed you in the slides, and you could just simply click on that email link and send them your questions, and then start a relationship directly with a WEDnetPA partner that way. Or I would be more than happy to take your calls as well.
Awesome. Another question is to confirm the employee has to make at least $10.88 per hour, correct?
That is correct, yes. That is based on the federal minimum wage. It's 150% of the federal minimum wage. So if that changes, then that amount could go up. It would be at the time of training, which is, I guess, another important point perhaps to make is that let's just say, for example, someone makes $10 an hour today, but they're going to take training in January, at which time they'll be making $11 an hour. That's fine. It's at the time of the training they must be making at least $10.88 per hour.
Okay, any other questions? We still have a couple minutes before our hour is up. Otherwise, we'll give you some time back in your day. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up. I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. So don't forget, I'm going to be sending out the follow-up email. I will include the link to the survey, the handouts from today, as well as Tom's contact information. So look for that before the close of business today. And I want to thank Tom again for presenting on this topic. It was really great information. Just wanted to encourage everybody to keep an eye out for upcoming webinars that we have. We have a couple of them scheduled and more coming that I'll be putting on the calendar later this week. So look for those. I just want to wish everybody a great day and a happy Independence Day week.
And Wendy, I would like to thank you for inviting me and having WEDnetPA highlighted here in this webinar, and thank all of those in attendance and encourage you to apply. It's really a simple process, and I think it can provide a lot of value to your organization. So please take some time to look at our website, get more familiar with the program and the process, reach out to us with any questions, and we look forward to working with you throughout the next fiscal year.
Okay, Tom, we did have another question come in if you have a moment.
Absolutely.
The employee must be full-time and eligible for full-time benefits. Is that correct?
That is correct. Now, we recognize that not every company offers benefits to every employee, or they don't necessarily offer the same benefits to every employee. So they must be full-time as defined by your organization. You know, some places 35 hours a week is considered full-time. Some places 40 hours a week is considered full-time. Whatever is considered a full-time employee, and they must be eligible for benefits whether they take them or not. In some cases, maybe a spouse has benefits and you know, someone doesn't take them. So they don't necessarily have to get benefits, but they have to be eligible for them if they wanted to take them.
Okay, great. Again, really good questions, everybody. Okay, I'm not seeing any more, so I think we'll wrap it up and give everybody a couple more minutes in your day. Thanks again, Tom, and hopefully we can, you know, provide more information as it becomes available in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you.